Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, as we had suspected and as we had foreseen, this massive air, land, and ground, air, land, and sea invasion of Gaza is not
so
likely
massive.
to take place.
Ain't so massive.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And because Netanyahu gave a news conference yesterday in which he said that the second phase of the this Gaza operation has now gone into effect. But this second phase is essentially, minor incursions into Gaza, none of this the huge onslaught that we'd been led to expect. And I think, as we thought, Israel just doesn't have the resources to undertake anything of this nature. This is all a giant bluff that Israel has been playing on us for years and years, that it's this regional superpower. It's the Sparta of the Middle East. It can take on everybody, thump, bong, bong, and it just knocks everyone out. It isn't the case. The problem, however, is that this horror show that is unfolding in Gaza will continue, and that's there's no let up on that, because it's something that Israel is able to do. I mean, it does have a lot of missiles, it has a lot of bombs, and the United States is going to keep supplying Israel with missiles and bombs, and so it can do an awful lot of destruction. It's got the blockade. It is it's very rigid. Israel can do that, as I think Norman Finkelstein has pointed out. Nothing goes in, no one comes out. So
it can turn on the lights, it can turn off the lights.
Exactly. Now it has turned off the lights. And the United Nations saying, well, public order is broken down because the people are raiding the food warehouses. They've all been raided, which is as you would have expected. But what's interesting, I mean, on the one hand, we have these pro-Palestinian demonstrations, or at least demonstrations against what Israel is doing, even in the cities of the United States, including New York City, which you wouldn't necessarily expect it there, but certainly in the cities of Europe. But the strange thing is that this isn't being reflected in any way, as far as the political elite are concerned. I mean, when we're talking about political figures who have expressed outrage at what Israel has done, I mean, you can count them on the fingers of one hand. I mean, the United States. I mean, I think other than Rashid Tlaib and a couple of other members of the Squad, that's about it. And then when you go to the UK, where there used to be very strong pro-Palestinian sentiment, it's among leading figures in the Labour Party or in the Conservative Party, nothing, zip. So it's yet another case in which there's a huge disparity in what people are feeling on the street, people feeling emotionally, and yet it's not in any way reflected among the political.
Well, and on top of it, George, to make matters far, far worse, is that censorship is going apace, doxing people. The whole thing with these universities in the United States. Name and shame for having an opinion. Okay, we've really become untethered from the years of yesteryear. About when it comes to free speech. So that divides, that chasm is really wide, and it's getting and the attack on alternative media. And they really, I know a handful of people that I used to watch and still occasionally watch, but they've been demonetized, and if this is how you make your living, it's harder and harder for them to do it for free. And what makes it even worse is that Google makes money off of their labor, but they don't. Okay,
as we have found out.
Okay. Yes. So it's really hard for them to keep going, which understandable. But all of the levers of power are turned against a dissenting opinion. And folks, through my lifetime, through George's lifetime, this has been a very from time to time, a very high profile issue. It's unfortunately gone on for so long, and it gets worse and worse as we've been watching on your television screens. But you could have a dissenting opinion. I mean, it wasn't controversial. Oh, well, he supports the Palestinians. This guy's an Israel firster. Everything was known. Okay. But it didn't get to the point where you're an apologist for Hitler. I mean, right. Sure, maybe the ultra Zionists might say that, but a lot of other people would say, well, that's go way too.
But this is what's so pernicious, and we've had this now for several years. It's been moving in this direction in which somehow speech is deemed to be violence. And so, yeah, it's perfectly appropriate to restrict speech because, after all, we're restricting violence, and this goes on all the time. I mean, at another level, when you have this judge in New York in the Trump case, when he keeps fining Trump because he supposedly said something about this judge's staff, he said, "Well, I don't want my assistant getting killed." Well, there's no, where's your evidence that there's any chance of getting killed? Or, the Karine Jean-Pierre, when she has, because somebody was criticizing Fauci and said, this sort of talk is extremely dangerous. No, this is not, it's known as free speech. People have strong views. They express their strong views. It's not the same as violence.
I have a very, very thick skin, and every negative thing you possibly could say about a human being has been thrown my way. George, I'm here. Right. I'm doing okay. My blood pressure is under control. Right. I don't have bodyguards. Right. I just expect it. Expect it.
Exactly. So I want to show you a statement issued by the Anti-Defamation League.
Oh,
now, this is a big money-making operation. I mean, it's a scam. Because it has this it has a very sterling reputation because supposedly it's fighting anti-Semitism. But of course, it's essentially a gigantic money-making operation on behalf of the Democratic Party.
And giving cover to Ukrainian Nazis. That's one of their latest triumphs.
That's right. ADL records dramatic increase in U.S. anti-Semitic incidents following October the 7th Hamas massacre. So here's this statement. And then this is the Center on Extremism notes nearly 400% increase in preliminary anti-Semitic incidents reported year over year. Now, again, whenever you have this number, 400%, well, I mean, if you've got, tiny number to begin with, I mean, 400% is still a tiny number. So, but it says here that since the Hamas massacre of Israeli civilians, now right away, that isn't true. We have no idea what the breakdown
Why don't we know that, George?
Exactly. Why don't we know that?
Why don't we know that?
Exactly. Because we know that there were military and police that were killed by Hamas. We also know, and I think this is something that Max Blumenthal written about, is that when the Israelis retaliated, they did it basically massacring Hamas as well as their hostages. So in other words, they just weren't making any distinction between hostages and the hostage takers. So that kind of beefed up the numbers. When you look at 1,400, there weren't actually 1,400 killed by Hamas. There was 1,400, including the sort of wild shooting by Israelis. But anyway, it says it has recorded a significant spike in anti-Semitic incidents across the United States. Preliminary data indicates that reported incidents of harassment, vandalism, and assault increased by 388% over the same period last year.
Well, do they really? Oh, okay. They're going to use real numbers now.
Exactly. But then exactly, and then we're going to look. Well, what were these incidents? Always, because you always think, well, oh yeah, well, it's like Kristallnacht. They were, people were going around, breaking the shops owned by Jews. ADL recorded a total of 312 anti-Semitic incidents between the 7th and the 23rd. 190 of which were directly linked to the war in Israel and Gaza. By comparison, during the same period in 2022, ADL received a preliminary reports of 64 incidents, including 4 that were Israeli related. And then they have the interactive map. And then they say,
interactive map?
What is it? Yeah, I know, well, we're here. Okay. ADL also tracked anti-Israel rallies since October the 7th, at least 109 of which ADL found explicit or strong implicit support for Hamas and or violence against Jews in Israel. Well, I mean, Jews in Israel. I'm not saying violence against Jews in the United States, which I think, well, can then say, okay, well, where is it? Who actually urged violence against Jews in Israel? Well, that sounds like violence against Israel, war against Israel. Well, there's been a state of war in the Middle East for an awful long time. But look, notice how they kind of twisted things to make it sound as if, well, this is just anti-Semitism. That's what, Jews against Israel.
Okay. All right, let's look at these 2 paragraphs here, everybody. Okay. Incidences. Okay, 1. Let's see, where are we going? Incidences twice. Here we go. Incidents 3 times in 2 paragraphs. Well, what is an incident, George?
Well, that's it. Exactly right. What is indeed an incident? And that's what we're gonna come to, when they start listing. It said, and then we have Jonathan Greenblatt, a kind of a political hack. When conflict erupts in Israel, anti-Semitic incidents soon follow in the US and globally. From white supremacists in California displaying, white supremacists in California. I mean, how many of them are there? I mean, in California, but all right. Displaying anti-Semitic banners on highway overpasses to radical anti-Zionists harassing Jewish people because of their real or perceived support for the Jewish state. There was a Jewish people because of their real or perceived support. Well, when you say harassing them, well, it's also known as debate. I mean, it's, if they're ardent supporters of Israel, well, they're likely to be challenged. I mean, if you go out, with a waving the Israeli flag, well, chances are somebody's going to come up to you and challenge you on it. I mean, but they count that as somehow an anti-Semitic incident.
Okay, George, you made this slide here, so obviously you're using a different medium here. But in the ADL article or press release, did they show a picture of this over?
No, they don't. But they do list the incident. So here is a sampling of incidents reported across the country. On October the 8th, in Clifton, New Jersey, a car with individuals holding Palestine flags appeared to intentionally swerve out of its lane, nearly hitting a visibly Jewish family. So appeared to intentionally swerve. How do you determine that? I mean, that it intentionally swerved. I mean, it just may have been bad drivers.
Those little booklets we used to have to learn how to drive, okay, and all the signs and all that. I'm sure if we look, there must be a category of intentional swerve. We put that up, okay? That's a real traffic term, intentional swerve.
It is. Intentional. And then
maybe the guy was smoking a cigarette and it dropped in his lap.
Exactly. Exactly.
When I was a smoker, that happened to me all the time.
Exactly. And it sounds like if they were holding Palestinian flags, it sounds like they were kind of, one hand holding a flag, another hand holding the steering wheel. Well, that's what happens.
The point is, everyone, this is completely out of context. I don't know what it means. How could anyone know what it means?
Of course not, because we don't know anything about it. Appeared to, nearly hitting, but it didn't hit this visibly Jewish family. How do we, what does visibly Jewish mean?
What is visibly Jewish?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, does it say, was it they were wearing a yarmulke or what? How do you know that this is, visibly Jewish stuff? Anyway, October the 9th, Detroit. A Jewish student was harassed, shoved, and called a fucking Zionist while painting a free speech rock with an Israeli flag on the campus of Wayne State University. Now, it sounds like he's a supporter of Israel, obviously. So he's painting an Israeli flag, painting a free speech rock with an Israeli flag on a campus. Well, chances are there are going to be people on the campus who are going to be unhappy about this. What is it? Harassed, shoved, and called a name. Okay, well, that's what happens at campus. I mean, these are young people, and they get very excited.
Wear a MAGA hat.
Yeah, that's right. And again, I mean, if you say fucking Zionist,
Well, I mean, why do you have to? I'm not sure. Intuitively, it sounds kind of strange to me. You know, wouldn't it be? Don't you use the reverse, like, you know, Palestine hater? You know,
right?
I mean, you know, I don't, you know, this sounds like, you know, excuse me, sir, but can I say something to you? You know, fucking Zionist, okay?
Right.
I mean, it's just something that, at least in my mind, is not what you would say to somebody, okay?
Well, no,
I don't know.
I guess not. But if that's what he was called, then again, it's a political statement. I mean, he's basically saying, you know, I don't like your political ideology. There's nothing anti-Semitic about that. I mean, you know, the whole point of this is to say, well, this is anti-Semitic. Well, if he calls him a, somebody a Zionist, then that's not an anti-Semitic. I mean, you know, that's
Yeah,
somebody who doesn't like his ideology.
but this is what's really insidious here, something that George and I have noticed a lot over the years. And there's been a concerted campaign to equate everything that has to do with Israel as either Semitic or anti-Semitic. Okay, so any kind of speech, you know, is falls into that category, which of course it doesn't. Okay, right. I mean, you know, most of growing up, and even when I was at university, this was an issue. The most ardent supporters of the Palestinians were Jews, okay? Because their attitude is not in my name. I have nothing to do with these Zionists in Israel.
Oh,
okay, they're lunatics.
No, that's exactly right. And I think, you know, to this day, I think the most effective critics of Israel, I mean, started with, of course, Noam Chomsky, and then Norman Finkelstein, and today we have Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate. All of whom were Jews. Yeah. So that's exactly right. But it's very interesting because it's relatively recent that this equation has been made that, you know, if you attack Israel, you know, you're anti-Semitic. And you know, I think it started around in the 1980s because up until then, you know, I mean, admittedly, there weren't that many critics of Israel around. I mean, you know, Israel was this plucky little country taking on all comers. I think, you know, it's more like, you know, as it became harder and harder to justify what Israel did, that you know, that you had to then turn out, well, if you're criticizing us, you're anti-Semitic. And that's now, that equation is firmly placed, you know, much like George Soros. You know, a lot of people didn't like George Soros back in the 80s and 90s, and suddenly, if you're anti-Soros, you're an anti-Semite. It was an amazing kind of tour de force, you know, to turn this around.
Yeah, but Israel doesn't like.
No, Soros is like, yeah, that's a separate issue. Exactly. I mean, that just shows how silly the whole thing. That, well, if you criticize Soros, you're anti-Semitic, because precisely Israel hates Soros, and Soros is no fan of Israel. So no. Anyway, on October the 10th in Los Angeles, an individual shouted, "I am Hamas," and made death threats to Jewish individuals standing by a kosher restaurant.
This was all recorded, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. You know, he really made death threats to Jewish individuals. I find that very hard to believe because, or he may just be a crazy person. You know, again, you know, there are a lot of crazy people around in the United States. I mean, you know, you've lived there. I lived there for many years. I mean, there are lots of nutcases, you know, hanging around outside any place, threatening everybody.
Well, you remember, George? It was many years ago now. I can't even remember. Many years ago, there was I think it was in like Minnesota or something like that, and a Sikh community was attacked by some lunatic. And he thought they were Arabs, okay, because of their headgear. Okay?
Right.
And they explained to him, no, these aren't Muslims, these aren't Arabs. Right. They're completely different people. He didn't know the difference. So yeah, there's a lot of crazy people.
That's right. And then on October the 12th in Indianapolis, a man carrying an Israeli flag was allegedly assaulted by a pro-Palestinian protester. Well, okay, that's the kind of thing that does happen. You know, somebody carries an Israeli.
What is assault?
Exactly. What is
assault?
assault? That's right. They never make this out. And again, assault, was he arrested? I mean, have charges been brought against this person? You know, we want to know. Assaulted by, but you know, again, he's carrying an Israeli flag. The moment you do that, you know, it's going to arouse, you know, indignation among somebody.
You're inviting political
One
speech.
pro-Palestinian protester. It's not like suddenly a crowd of anti-Semites surrounded him.
Just think about the very idea of a flag. You're expressing political speech.
Exactly, it is
carrying a flag, okay, and it's done. I mean, the point is, folks, how many people walk around their own apartment with a flag? Because nobody will see it.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. On October the 15th in New York, an individual allegedly punched a Jewish woman in the face at Grand Central Terminal. When she asked why, he responded, "You are Jewish." Now, again, was this recorded? Well, that's obviously, but at the same time, this is the kind of thing that happens in New York. And it's nothing to do with Jews. I mean, somebody's just going to punch you. I've been punched several times, and then, you know, and then person often just doesn't give any explanation. I mean, just, you know, he's just psychotic.
Well,
I mean, that's what happens.
okay, well, I'm going to go get myself in trouble now. But what was the race of the person that did that?
Yes, quite.
Okay.
Yes, quite.
You know, because if you look at people that are victims of that kind of irrational, out of the blue,
right.
You know, it happens to Asians a lot.
Right, exactly.
Members of the Black community, they don't like a lot of people in the Black community don't like Asians, okay, sure. And they don't like Jews as well.
Right, but at the same time, you know, how does one tell? You know, okay, oh, it's a Jewish person. How you tell that? I mean, I can't tell. I mean, it's like, you know, oh, well, this is a Jewish person. I mean, I don't know. Well, because she had dark hair.
In New York? Yeah. In New York?
Yeah, but New York, exactly. You've got Italians, Greeks, Jews. How you have this brilliant insight, you know, by somebody's physical appearance of that person. He's not Mediterranean. No, I think definitely Jewish, I'd say. So, and then it says, Walnut Creek, California. White Lives Matter, California, a white supremacist group, held a rally on a highway overpass and displayed signs stating, "Save Gaza, no more wars for Israel, and watch Europa, the last battle." I'm not sure what "watch Europa, the last battle" means, but that seems like, again, political speech. Save Gaza, no more wars for Israel. Again,
well, okay, George, I mean, look the start, October 15th, the beginning of that sentence. Go all the way to White Lives Matter. Okay, now cross out a white supremacist group. Okay, a lot of people say, "Save Gaza, no more wars for Israel." That doesn't make you a white supremacist.
No, not at all. I think that is a very strong strain in you know, political discourse in the U.S., particularly since 9/11, in which basically the people thought this whole war, this war on terror and the invasion of Iraq, was a war for Israel. I mean, that was a very powerful line of criticism. That, you know, why do this? Why invade Iraq? What does Iraq has got to do with 9/11? And so therefore was the theory, well, this is a war for Israel. And then we looked at the people who advocated on behalf of that war within the Bush administration. You say, well, you know, these are all people who are very close to Likud. You know, then so you know that, and they'd worked for Likud during the 90s. So when you say no more wars for Israel, you know, you could be wrong. You could say no, it didn't have anything to do with Israel, but it's certainly a very, very important line of criticism. Then it says, in New York, a group of Israeli individuals were harassed and at least one assaulted by a pro-Palestinian protester in Times Square.
How do you know that they were Israeli individuals?
Yeah, exactly. How do you know? Also, there were a number of them, and there was one pro-Palestinian protester. So that's so there's just one pro-Palestinian protester, and this group were harassed and at least one assaulted. That's kind of a strange setup. It wasn't like one hapless you know, Jewish shopkeeper was set upon by a group of wild Hamas supporters.
Well, you know, if you're making very explicit political speech.
Well, exactly. We don't know the context. That's the point.
Yeah. But you know, George, you and I have seen it all through our lives. You know, either group of people carrying this flag, group of people carrying that flag, and inevitably somebody gets pushed. Okay.
Of course.
And it's a little bit of a scuffle, and you pray to God that's as far as it goes.
Exactly. Now, this seems to be harassed and at least one assaulted. What exactly? What does assault mean?
Like bloody nose?
Exactly. Well, so or just could be a little bit of shoving. So it sounds like they were there to protest, or they were there rather to support Israel. Maybe they were carrying their flags, and a pro-Palestinian protester was unhappy. Okay, again, but there's nothing here to suggest that any of this is to do with anti-Semitism. I mean, none of these examples, except this one at Grand Central, is anyone targeted because they're Jewish, or at least and that's just alleged that this person punched her because she's Jewish. All of this is about Israel and Gaza. So the thesis that somehow this is anti-Semitic incidents are spiking. This is always the case with the ADL, and they're always treated with this great respect. And the fact is that they're never able to produce any serious evidence for their claims. And then he goes on.
And George, you do remember that in the, from time to time, and it seems to be a trend here, on an American university, a swastika was painted on a undergraduate's door.
That's right.
And it was like a hoax. It was a Jewish student trying to bring great awareness and all that. I mean, and George and I we're not remotely in the position to say this never happens. Oh, this is fake. We're not saying that. It's just that the way you construct this argument and the words that you use, it's really kind of, it's very biased, and it's very emotive. And all I can say is that the way you've described it, your terminology, assault, is there an asterisk at the bottom say assault means blah, 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 blah?
Right. Well, that's
it. Okay.
Right. But that's the thing, that what makes those incidents always very peculiar, the swastika incidents, is that they never catch the perpetrator. I mean, it's always a mystery. All of those swastika. Now, how can that be? I mean, there are security cameras everywhere. I mean, how can it possibly be that you can't catch the and that if they're really, that the authorities would absolutely nail somebody. Oh, great! Imagine this guy who painted a swastika. He's a Trump supporter. I mean, you go to town for that, but they never get anyone. No one is ever caught. So it's very strange.
We always say here, if they have the evidence, when they make a claim, and if they had the evidence, they will always show you. Always.
Yeah. I mean,
Russia blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Okay,
that's right.
They had the evidence.
That's it. It would be a banquet, a feast. We got him. We got this. It's a group of MAGA students. They daubed a swastika on this Jewish student's door. Boom. I mean, this would be New York Times would be running with this for months. This would be a feature on the front page of the New York Times. Endless profiles of everybody involved. So the fact that they say, well, it was a swastika thing, but no one ever found out who did it.
Yeah, but when Ukrainian soldiers are wearing swastikas, it's actually, they interpret it as being this kind of ancient Mesopotamia.
Oh, yeah, that's right, exactly. Yes. Yes, it's an ancient Hindu symbol. That's what it's all about. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. ADL also recorded a nearly 1,000% increase in the daily average of violent messages mentioning Jews and Israel in white supremacist and right-wing extremist channels on the messaging platform Telegram in the days following the massacre in Israel. But as we've spoken about many times before, these are always, it's always a real question about these. We talked about RT. The moment a show is posted on the RT website, boom, there are all these messages. So, we got to do something about the Jews.
I used to monitor when my program was still on YouTube. I would because I was getting very suspicious about the comments, and so I asked the website people to send me a quick message when it's on YouTube, and so they'd say it's up 3 minutes ago, and so I would check the first 10 comments. Let's say we're doing whaling
Yeah.
in the Taiwan
Yeah,
Straits,
right.
first 10 comments about anti-Semitism,
That's right.
or
It's all, yeah,
accusing me and my program of anti-Semitism,
right.
when it
But it
had
all,
nothing to do with that.
that's right. Or the Jews, the Jews run everything. The Jews are the Jews. The
Exactly.
Jews can control it, America, Zog, Zionist organized government. Hey, exactly. It was a show about, whatever, like, yeah, as you say, whaling in the South China Sea. And suddenly we're talking about Jews. I mean, this is a way essentially to create a a notion that, somehow the RT is promoting anti-Semitism. So then the New York Times and the Washington Post can write a story. There's been a spike in anti-Semitic comment. Oh, how do you know? Oh, look at all these comments on the that appear on the RT website. That's the reason for this just endless obsession about the Jews.
Well, ADL, I challenge you on the white supremacist and right wing extreme channels on the messaging program Telegram. Well, were there Palestinian, anti-Arab, and anti-Muslim messaging on Telegram? You bet there were.
Right.
Okay. I
Right.
mean, or putting up videos showing injured and dead Palestinian children and reveling in it. Okay.
Well, I think
Al Jazeera, I don't think they aired it. I think it was an article that they had on their website. And when I saw this, I thought it was a parody. But there's a competition in Israel to mock the death of Palestinians and how they're dying. And it's really, George, it makes you shake in awe of how scary it is that people get enjoyment from it. That's all over Telegram as well. Okay.
Right.
I like Telegram. It's free speech, but you better know what you're digesting, because it's wild. It's a wild platform.
Right, but that's the thing. I mean, and then again, if you somehow weigh, what goes on in one direction and what goes on the other, are there people who are losing their jobs for expressing pro-Israeli sentiments? Are there people losing their jobs for attacking Hamas? No. Are
these people being doxxed?
Yeah, exactly. But are people losing their jobs because they're criticizing Israel or because they're expressing pro-Palestinian sentiment? Yes, there are people losing their jobs. I mean, we have Ron DeSantis, who boasts that, and it's a reality, that he's basically just outlawed a pro-Palestinian student organization in the Florida State University system. Apparently you can just do that. So,
well,
like a violation of the First Amendment to me. Again, there's no evidence that, and he hasn't produced any evidence that they're advocating violence or they're practicing violence or anything. Just, I don't like their views. Boom, you're banned. Is there anything going the other way? Are pro-Jewish or pro-Israeli organizations being banned?
Well, it takes a situation that we've been in since October 7th. It's a tragic occasion in which people show themselves for who they really are. Okay, so Ron DeSantis is showing us who he really is. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is showing us who he really is. Nikki Haley, because she's so dumb, she didn't really have to, but she does it on steroids now. Okay. Everyone shows themselves for who they really are. And so Ron DeSantis, there's no reason for me ever to listen to a word that you will ever utter again. If you're trying to shut down free speech at a university, and believe me, at virtually any university in the United States, I would be very much the minority opinion. Okay.
Right. That exactly.
Very much but do I want to see people that I disagree shut down? Absolutely.
Exactly. And one should say, before we move on, that we need to have at least a moment's silence for the demise of Mike Pence's campaign, because that shook the world. That was 10 seconds that shook the world.
Let me get these crocodile tears out. Here we go.
That's right. There he was. He went to the was it the Jewish Republican, whatever that thing is called, and they all spoke, and then when Mike Pence's turn came, he announced that he was suspending his campaign. And of course, many of us wondered, well, why did he ever think that he had the slightest chance of anything? I mean, yeah, well, it's a very, very it's very sad.
Well, I mean, let's let's put it into context here. Of course, he was with this kind of Christian Zionist Republican. Well, I don't know the name; it doesn't matter. But we have to remember when he crashed and burned. It was Tucker Carlson about religious freedom in Ukraine. Okay, okay, not this issue.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. He was always a very dubious candidate. It was very strange for him to think that he had any shot, particularly given his behavior on January the 6th. But you're absolutely right. I mean, he was on that Tucker Carlson's interview. It was a catastrophic performance, but all of the Republican contenders, with the possible exception of Trump, they're all vying with one another to express their undying loyalty to Israel. It's very strange because it's never obvious. I mean, it just isn't obvious to me why why the loyalty to Israel. I mean, we talk about
no, George, it's easy to explain. Fear.
Fear. Okay,
that's it.
Okay.
That's it, because it's mindless. It's not thought out at all. People are afraid.
Right. No, I think so. But it's very interesting. All of these Republican politicians, and not just Republican, there's a lot of Democrats. They all say Israel is our greatest ally. No one ever explains, other than when they bring out this, they're in the forefront of the fight against terror. They're there, boom.
No, they're not.
They're fighting against the terrorists so that we don't have to. I mean, all
this. Israel gets us to fight terrorism.
Yeah,
they never fight it themselves. No, they don't.
No. Exactly. But nobody in the United States would say Great Britain is our greatest ally. But at least there would be a certain logic to saying that. No, Great Britain. They're saying this Israel. The country. They're not of Anglo-Saxon stock. They came from Russia, Eastern Europe. They speak a different language. They have a very different political tradition. There isn't quite that's the separation of church and state there. And yet this is our greatest ally.
George, I mean, this is probably almost an impossible question to answer, but I've never met an Israeli that loved America. I've never heard them say that. I mean, they like having the American passport, okay, but I mean, I've come across more foreigners that speak with great affinity for Palestine, but I've never met Israelis speak with kindly about the United States. It's just like kind of a given, I guess. Or I guess you don't need to state it. Okay, it's understated.
Right? No. It's exactly right. And no Israeli would for one moment think of sacrificing Israeli interests for the interest of the United States. I mean, it would just be, completely, mind-boggling.
You're the one that
sacrificed. You're going on about.
You sacrifice. We don't sacrifice.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
yeah. I mean, George. So you have the events of 9/11, okay, and then for obvious reasons, it's all conjured up that Iraq somehow was involved in it.
Right.
Okay. All right. Where was the Israeli battalion? Where was the Israeli division?
No. Exactly. Well, that was, of course, a very, very skillful maneuver.
Oh, yeah.
From bin Laden, to 9/11. So that's September the 11th. And then March. So 18 months went by. They couldn't pull it off in the immediate aftermath. They knew they needed to keep maneuvering and molding American public opinion to be ready for this onslaught against Iraq. And of course, it was led by a group of people who had been urging an attack on Iraq since the 1990s and who now found themselves within the Bush administration. So but again, that was a highly skilled operation. Now they've tried to do that with Iran as well, you know, with the whole Israel is ready to attack Iran. We're going to bomb Iran. That's it. You know, Iran's got this nuclear weapons program. We're going to bomb them. That's it. You know, don't hold me back. And we're going to do it. Now, of course, everyone knows, you know, Israel's not going to do that. I mean, Israel just Iran is 10 times the size of Israel. I mean, you know, what, you're going to go to war with Iran? I mean, it's nuts. But they do want to push the United States into a war with Iran. And they've been doing that for many, many years. They've been trying to push the United States into a war with Iran.
And the latest one is, remember John Bolton and that American drone that was shot down. He thought it was a, you know, it was a done deal, done and dusted. He really,
exactly. That's exactly right. That's absolutely right. That he thought that was it. We've got that moment, and then Trump, you know, kind of at the last moment thought, hey, this doesn't make any sense. You know, they shot down the drone, and now we're gonna kill Iranians. I mean, there's no proportionality in this. And Bolton turned against Trump with a fury over that incident. But you know, they could still get it. You know, who knows what's going to happen in this crisis, or you know, whether that could lead to a war with Iran.
This is the begin. This is the very, very beginning. Okay, this is huge, and it is going to change the course of history. This thing is not going to wind down anytime soon at all.
That's right. That's right. And so he goes, it is incumbent on all leaders, this is Greenblatt, it is incumbent on all leaders, from political leaders to CEOs to university presidents, to forcefully and unequivocally condemn anti-Semitism and terrorism. This isn't hard, words matter, and while the war in Gaza escalates, we encourage all those in positions of power to use their platforms to condemn hate and terrorism wherever it occurs.
Well, I am against anti-Semitism. I hate terrorism. I live in Russia. I think it was 2008, 2009. I was going to work. I lived at right off of Kievskaya Vokzal. I was going to Parakulturi, where our RT's offices are, and I heard the bomb go off. Okay, I know what terrorism is. Thankfully, I was not a victim of it. But you know, seeing people coming out of the metro with black faces and ripped clothing, okay, yeah, it's not a hypothetical to me. But I'm very critical of Zionism, of its Israeli state and its foreign policy. Does not make me anti-Semitic. It does not make me pro-terrorist. Who's pro-terrorism except for terrorists?
No, that's right. But that's why they need to express, you know, use the word terrorism to characterize Hamas. But there's a real problem there.
But it's okay. I mean,
right.
you can do that, but it's a terrorist organization. I got no problem with that.
Well, except that it's hard to say that it is a terrorist organization, because after all, you know, Hamas does basically, they do run Gaza. You know, terrorist organizations are usually non-state actors. I mean, that's the first thing. You know, you usually, you know, call them terrorists, because otherwise then they say, well, Russia's a terrorist organization. So anytime you don't like any government anyway, you say, well, they're a terrorist organization. But Hamas clearly, and after all, these Fox News people and all the critics pretty much identify Hamas with the Palestinians. I mean, they don't say, well, you know, Hamas is just this terrorist minority that seized power and holds down the Palestinians. I say, no. Palestinians and Hamas are one and the same. Well, if that's the case, then it's hard to say it's a terrorist organization. I mean, that doesn't really make any sense. Then you'd have to say they are the legitimate expression of these people. So,
George, I'm agreeing with you, but it's the poverty, the tragedy of this situation is that a group of people, an organization like Hamas, has to resort to this type of behavior to be able to start to, at the very minimum, defend their right to exist. I mean, this is being forced upon everyone. If there had not been a blockade, okay, and there hadn't been the periodic mowing of the lawn, cutting the grass, and every single day in the West Bank, someone is killed. Okay, yeah, this is the conditions that created Hamas, and Israel did that.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Now, if the argument is that Hamas wanted to provoke this Israeli attack, and then they want to provoke a wider regional war, then that may be true. I mean, all of that may be true. We don't know exactly what Hamas was thinking, but at the same time, you say, well, okay. I mean, that's not a completely irrational way of thinking. I mean, it's you know, I mean, it does make sense given what has been happening, which is essentially that the cause of the Palestinians was being marginalized. And essentially, you know, that we'll do this Abraham Accords, normalization of the state of Israel, and then everyone will forget about the Palestinians. And that was that was the strategy that Israel was pursuing, and that was the strategy of the U.S. administrations of Trump and Biden, where we just simply forget, and that, you know, that's been a long time desire on the part of the neoconservatives on the United States. Well, let's just marginalize the whole Palestinian thing. Let's just forget about it, push it to the side, so that everyone will say, you know, and we'll get on with the more important things. You know, we'll
because the whole argument was there are no Palestinians. If there's no Palestinians, there's no problem.
So that everyone will just you know, forget about the issue. So then again, if that is the case, and I think it is, then it did make sense for Hamas to do what it did. I mean, it's a, you know, within that frame of reference, to say it makes sense for them to bring attention to their case, and it has. I mean, clearly, you know, we can see all these demonstrations in the cities around the world. It has finally brought attention to their case.
People have a right to resist occupation, and they're under occupation, and they even have the right to use arms to thwart and challenge that occupation. That's international law. Now, you know, we don't know what happened on October 7th during Hamas's operation. I haven't seen any pictures, George. I don't know if you've seen any, okay? All we do is get a number, okay? If civilians were killed, who did kill the civilians? From what you know, I've heard a number of different versions of what happened, but I'm not going to decide anywhere because I don't have any evidence in front of me, okay? But yeah, I mean, you want to say what they did was an act of terror? Yeah, but Gaza's been under a terrorist regime since the blockade started, okay?
Right.
So is what, you know, two wrongs don't make a right. Okay, we can go down that rabbit hole all you want, okay? But it's cold comfort for the people that have been under occupation.
Well, again, and this is really the problem, and has been the problem now for a long time in the Middle East, which is that there could have been a reasonable settlement of this. You know, because again, we've got Israel, the Palestinians, and you've got these various Middle Eastern powers. All of these are second, if not third ranked powers in the world. You know, this isn't the great powers, and you say, well, you can't do much because this is a great power, and if a great power says, you know, no, then so it could have been resolved. I mean, you know, when, you know, from the moment that the state of Israel was created, you know, the partition, the wars, and everything else, it could have been resolved. Now, why hasn't it been? Well, because Israel did not want to resolve it, and the United States enabled it not to resolve this. And why doesn't Israel want to resolve it? Well, this is simple. They basically want this land to be Greater Israel. I mean, it's this, they took this land, West Bank and Gaza, they intend this to be Greater Israel.
And they've been getting away with it. So right. why would you change course?
Right. You know,
nothing succeeds like success. Okay.
Well, that's right. And as long as you have, you know, the United States in your corner, there's nothing much, you know, anyone can do. I mean, you can say, Russia can say, well, we have the United States UN Security Council resolutions, and we have all these different plans that have been put forward over the years, which is all true. But if the United States basically says, "Hey, we're not going to push Israel to do anything that Israel doesn't want to do," then that's it. You know, essentially nothing much is going to happen. I mean, for the foreseeable future. I mean, I can't see anything much is going to happen unless things get really nasty, and that's always been Israel's problem, which is ultimately you're still a small country, and you are surrounded by countries that are getting bigger and stronger. Iran today is not the Iran of 1982 during the Lebanon War, when it was still in the throes of the revolution and involved in a nasty war with Iraq that went on for 8 years. Yeah. Iran is now much stronger. You know,
well, George, the issue for me is, outside of just this crass propagandizing, you know, criticizing Israel as anti-Semitism. I hope we don't have to do another one of these because it's just dumb. Okay, It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't solve any problems. All it does is to attack people personally, like you said, get doxing them, people losing their jobs and all of this. But what worries me, to be honest, is that if you look at how things are coalescing, you have to remember, we all have to remember, because of Israel's illegal invasion and occupation of southern Lebanon, we got Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is not a ragtag, little militia. This is a very sophisticated group of people that have learned very valuable lessons. They're not a peer to Israel because Israel's a nuclear power, but in a conventional sense, they are near peer as they can get, okay, that Israel has ever faced. Okay, we have Hamas, which has shown that it can create enormous havoc and get the world's attention. And then you have Syria, you have Yemen, you have Iran. We haven't seen all of these points come together like they are right now. And what I think about and concerned about for everyone involved is that I think there'll be people in Hamas, in Hezbollah, in Iran, in Yemen, in Syria say, we're not going to get this arrangement again. Maybe never, maybe a generation, because Israel will learn from its mistakes, okay? And that's what makes this such a volatile and scary moment, because Hezbollah is saying, we've been planning for something like this for years, and all of a sudden it's all coming together. And, the appetite comes with the eating, like this is an opportunity here, because Israel is more vulnerable now than it has ever been since the existence of the Israeli state.
No, I think that's a very good point, and I think that's always been the problem that Israel has faced, which is that ultimately it's still a small country, and it cannot go on prevailing against a bunch of much bigger countries. And then it was obvious even after 1967 when Israel thought, well, we can just simply sit on our lead. And then we've defeated all of our adversaries. No, it was obvious then. They're not going to the Arab protagonists are not going to fight the same war that they fought in '67, and so you ultimately Israel has to face that unless it comes to some kind of a settlement, it's just not only is it going to be facing more of these wars, but it could basically just be facing total destruction. I mean, if everyone sets on Israel like this, I mean, it really could be curtains. It's a small country, population 9 million. The Jewish population is 7 million, so it's a country smaller than Hungary, and no one takes Hungary very seriously. So Israel really can't just pretend, well, we can deal with all comers all the time. No, you can't. And I think that's why
one of the things that we've seen since 67, 73, Israel's consistent policy of and largely successful, I think we can say, is pitting the Shia against the Sunni. That's something that's been very important in their foreign policy. This whole Abraham Accords, is part of this. They want to have a united front against Iran. And what has happened here is that the Sunni and the Shia, at this point in time, if you go across the entire region, now they're in lockstep together. Okay, maybe not policy-wise, but certainly in terms of sentiment. What Israel has been doing for decades is in tatters right now. What the United States was doing under at least two administrations of this Arab normalization with Israel, that is in tatters right now. Across the board, everything is in tatters.
Well, yeah, because again, in the Middle East, whatever the divisions that exist, say among Iran and Saudi Arabia, as to which is the dominant power in the Middle East, or between Turkey and Saudi Arabia, again, which is the leading Islamic state in the world, none of that matters when it comes to Israel, because they're all united on that issue. They're all united. And again, that it's an extraordinary achievement on the part of Israel that it was 75 years after the founding of the state, the intensity of the hatred towards Israel is much greater now than it was then. That's a remarkable thing, because normally it kind of goes the other way. It kind of hatred sort of disappears. People start thinking about other things. But here it's more intense now than ever. It is a mark of the absolute failure of Israeli statecraft to be in the situation that they're in after 75 years.
Well, also, George, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you look at the Palestinian diaspora in the region, they keep it alive too, as well. And when if you look at the Abraham Accords, it's all with monarchies. These are not even nominal democracies and whatnot. And it's these elites that can be bought off. They're trade-offs. They're trade. All these kinds of things these elites were interested in, but it has nothing to do with what, quote unquote, the Arab street has to say. And the Arab street is really loud right now. And so, and remember, it was the Jordanians that came up with resolutions condemning Israel and calling for a ceasefire. That Jordan is the closest Arab ally the United States has in the Middle East.
Right. No, I think
Egypt dressed down Blinken. I mean, Egypt comes with hat in hand every year to the United States for money.
Yeah, no, that's right. So I mean, a number of these states, like whether it's Egypt or Jordan, Saudi Arabia, yeah, okay, they don't really care that much about the Palestinians. But if push comes to shove, then they do care about it. They they have to show that what the hell are you doing? Doing business with the state that doesn't make any compromises at all. I mean, remember, when Sadat signed his Camp David Accords in 1978, but the final treaty was signed in 1979.
He signed his death warrants.
Yeah, but the point was that okay, he's got the Sinai back, he's got a peace treaty with Israel, but there was a second part to it, which is there had to be some kind of a deal on the Palestinians. Well, that never happened. And that's always the case. Israel signs these agreements with Sadat, the king of Jordan, and then, well, what's the corollary of that? And of course, if there isn't a corollary, then these leaders look very stupid. You signed this agreement, but there was supposed to be a second part to it, but the second part never really materialized. And the same thing would happen with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia normalizes, they'll make noises, yeah, but you got to kind of address this problem of the two-state solution. I mean, it's our plan that there should be a Palestinian state with the capital of East Jerusalem. And if that doesn't happen, you again look rather stupid. So this pattern, ultimately, it isn't sustainable.
Well, and also something you mentioned last time we spoke is that this ridiculous open door policy that Europe has had to illegal immigration. Right. Well, who are these people? Okay. Right. And they are letting, I was watching some of the pictures out of London. Woo! Wow! I think the last time we saw, numbers like that was, the anti-war movement in 2003 about Iraq. I mean, and if you look at the people, these are people that this is passionate for them. This is, it's not fishing rights with France. There are people that are passionate about it. Don't get me wrong. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Very few issues that can animate people like this, and the UK abstained. The cowards that they are.
Right. Well, they abstained, but a number of European powers actually voted with the Americans. So at least
Hungary did.
Hungary did, exactly, as did Croatia. But France voted against the Americans. Now, France has the largest Muslim population in Europe. I think it's the largest Muslim population outside of a Muslim country, but certainly the largest Muslim population in Europe. So France has to be very careful. But they voted for the resolution, as along with Russia and China. But the European division is quite interesting. Yeah, Hungary, which is going through these throes of philo-Semitism. I mean, it just loves, it's kind of really atoning for its past. It absolutely loves everything Jewish. Orban also likes Netanyahu, doesn't like Soros. So it's that he just really likes Israel. I mean, so that didn't surprise me, but it's kind of it is interesting that Britain, nonetheless, and Ukraine, incidentally, also abstained, which I thought was interesting because again, Ukraine now distancing itself on this one from the Americans. But Ukraine abstained.
The case with Hungary is it just political calculation or is it genuine?
Well, I don't know what the
I mean,
political.
because you're mucking up the EU, you're mucking up NATO, but as long as you're Israel's ally, I mean, does that
Right.
count
I
for
don't know.
something?
I don't think it's political calculation because I don't think they're going to get anything out of it. I mean, I don't think Biden's going to say, "Whoa, boy, Orban's not so bad after all,"
Yeah,
because
have them over for dinner.
yeah, exactly. Or Ursula von der Leyen isn't going to change her tune on this. I really think that it's some sort. It's a philo-Semitism, and maybe some kind of a perception that Israel is holding the fort against Muslim migrants. Some idea along those lines that yeah, they're kind of like us.
Not well thought out, but I see
the
the
Muslim
point.
migrant. No, I don't think it is. But the Soros aspect is also my enemy's enemy is my friend, and I mean I think that that does play a role in it. That Soros hates Israel, Israel hates Soros, therefore Israel must be a good guy.
Strange political alliances.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
But I mean, when we look at the UN vote, it's the United States, Israel, and a bunch of Pacific islands.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You can always count on those little islands in the Pacific.
That's
Will
right.
probably
Yeah.
disappear in a few years because of the rising oceans. But anyway, they always rely upon them. But I mean, and let's go further here. I mean, as we speak now, public opinion polls in the United States see that Democratic support for Joe Biden has gone down 11%. Okay, and that's and it was never really particularly high.
No,
okay,
no, that's right. But yeah, I mean, I don't think Israel is going to be a make or break issue among in U.S. policy. I just think that it's a slight problem among some of the left within the Democratic Party, but it's not a huge issue among Democrats. Certainly isn't a huge issue among Republicans. So I don't think it's going to hurt Biden that much. It's just a little bit. It's a little awkward when there's some Democrats who just don't particularly like this policy. But it's that the position essentially of the U.S. mainstream absolutely solid behind Israel, I think will prevail. I don't think Biden needs to worry too much about what Rashid Tlaib or some Democrat congressman candidate in the primaries is going to do. I don't think that's really that important.
Well, as long as I keep watching MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News, they're safe.
Yeah, I think so.
Because it's just horrific journal. I mean, George and I are so critical of the mainstream, but I mean, this is the depths of just no moral compass whatsoever. It's just it's something so important and you can't debate about it. Haven't you noticed that all the important things you can't debate?
Yeah. Oh, no, that's right.
I mean, should there be Halloween? Oh, jump in anytime you want, okay? And people, well, I have an opinion about Halloween, okay? Like, who cares, okay?
Right,
One way or another. But on this issue, it's very important, and it just shows. I do think that irrespective of what happens, it hurts American reputation in the world, and then people do see this, that the uncanny, unreasonable, illogical backing without any kind of a coherent common sense line of argument. They don't have one. It's just fanaticism.
Yeah, right. No, I think it's that's right. I mean, there've been people like Erdogan, who says, well, you shed crocodile tears about Ukraine, but you don't say anything about the Palestinians. Just say, hey, well, Israel's got to do whatever it's got to do. I think the problem is that I don't think America has had any for a long time any high reputation in the world. I mean, it's like as it's seen in the world. Yeah, of course, your crocodile tears about Ukraine are fake. We know this. Fake. We know exactly all the destructive policies that the U.S. wages, and the leading one is Israel. But ultimately, there's not that much you can do just like that about the United States. I mean, they still are very powerful, but their reputation, that I think that disappeared a long ago.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Anyway, so depressing, George. It's just so depressing. And what is so it's what a good exercise is go watch CNN for an hour and then watch Al Jazeera for an hour. I challenge anyone to do that, and tell me what you think. Tell me what you think about the two different approaches to coverage. Okay, what Al Jazeera for me is very interesting is because a lot of their personalities you can recognize them from CNN and you can recognize them from BBC and other Western news outlets, but they say something very different. Now, is it because they're told to say that, or is it they're free to say what they want? You know, I ask everyone to do that. Give it a try. It's an interesting exercise. All right, everybody, this is Peter and George. We're the Gaggle. We're on Local, so please go to the gaggle.locals.com. And since this is Sunday, George will be back in the saddle.
In the saddle, yes. 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Come with comments, criticisms, suggestions. Everything is welcome. On the way out the door, think about little buddy. You know, because you know, he has very strong views, and he's saying, well, you know, one of the things you're not allowed to talk about is why is the tip jar in this abysmal state? Apparently, that's verboten. But
I've explained to him repeatedly that Soros didn't take it. Okay.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. You know, Soros pays out a lot of money to keep everyone silent about the tip jar situation. So,
hush money.
Hush money. So, yeah, if you have a few bob in your pocket, whip them out, dunk them in that tip jar of his. You know, that'll, you know, stop him mumbling about Soros. He's very conspiratorial. We're very happy for all of your help and friendship and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology. And above all, we can get Buddy off this whole Soros thing. You know what happens to people who don't like Soros? No good end. So remember, if you like the Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.